Okay, so I'd like to welcome Sotiris to the podcast today. I hope I pronounced that right. So you're the senior user researcher at Meta. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me, Dale. Nice to meet you, and nice
No
to
problem at all.
chance to speak with you.
It's nice to have someone also from a big corporation like Meta. I'm interested in finding out how it is for you to work as a senior user researcher there.
Yes, yes, it is quite an interesting kind of situation. Just to give you kind of a
Yeah, sure. If you want
background.
to give, yeah, like an
Uh,
intro into who you
uh,
are, what you
yeah,
do now, etc.
yeah, I'm a user researcher, as you mentioned exactly, at Meta. I'm a mixed methods researcher.
Okay.
I had the chance in the past of working across multiple industries from fintech to
Mm.
telco,
Oh, wow.
insurance, and now I'm working with developer tools, more
Okay.
particularly at Meta. The area I'm working with has nothing to do with all the, sexy things and sexy products that, WhatsApp or Facebook or anything like that. I'm working
Okay.
in an area called data infra, which is practically
Right.
has to do with monitoring observability. So imagine something
Right.
between DevOps and enterprise software,
Okay.
like to
Oh,
put
okay.
it mildly. Software created by engineers for engineers.
Oh,
Highly
okay.
technical, of course, and very
Mm.
unique to uh, contain, in terms of research. It's very rare to
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
teams to work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is there, I don't know, do you know many other user researchers, UX researchers in this particular field, apart from obviously your teammates?
Yes, apart from my team, which is quite big.
Okay.
The thing is that there are very few companies that do that like themselves, that
Okay.
they create their own tools for that department for observability. There are third-party tools, of course. They do have this kind of setup of
Mm.
creating in depth. Funnily enough, when I say what I do and where I work, uh, um, a researcher might not be quite impressed by it, but engineers are because it's one thing to create those tools internally, and a second
Sure.
layer to have a researcher helping to
Yeah.
create those, if you understand.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Also, yeah, because like you say, like it's not something that's very common. So to have that research aspect to that particular niche field, I imagine it is, yeah, impressive to engineers also to have that side for like dedicated for them and their tools as well.
Yeah, it
That
is
that's
quite
really
niche.
cool. And how did you end up in this role? Was it something, did you transition like to that role within Meta, or did you join like, and that was your role from when you first
No, I
joined?
joined. I joined after my previous project. When my previous
Okay.
contract ended, I just moved directly into that team. So it was not
Okay.
an internal kind of transition. So yeah,
Okay.
I think it has been relevant to other things. I've worked with IDE tools or CLI tools, which is like the non-UI kind of approach on things where you have
Sure.
practically a platform that developers and engineers use
Yeah.
and utilize to write code. And I had done that in the past, which
Okay.
has been quite an interesting situation because,
Mm.
engineers are humans too, and they they have needs and
Absolutely.
discover them, and they have many things to put to the table, and they know exactly what they're looking for. So
Yeah,
are
sure.
very particular users.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. Thanks for kind of going into that a bit as well. I'm also interested, you mentioned briefly kind of your past and your work history. Do you want to just explain to the listeners kind of, yeah, your journey into user research, when it began? Did you directly from, no one's ever told me that they have, but have you ever directly from university or from your studies gone straight into user research, or how was that journey for you?
Absolutely not. I had absolutely no connection with research back then. And
Mm.
when I started off, I was more of a what you back in the day would call a UI designer, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then I very quickly moved into UX design. I
Okay.
didn't kind of stayed on the UI aspect for a long
Mm.
time. And as a UX designer, I was working with multiple organizations as a consultant.
Mm.
And in my process, I had to apply research practices quite early on. So in my early days, I was doing both the design and
Right.
the research. After a point, the market kind of got to a point where there were resources for splitting up things. So
Okay.
you might remember there are still examples of UI UX designers or a
Mm.
UX designer that does everything end to end.
Mm.
But some companies were more mature and they kind of split the role. So you had
Yeah.
your UI designer already in the team, you had your UX
Hmm.
designer already in the team, and I found out that uh, it made no sense for me to go into any UX design practice without any research. So it became
Absolutely.
mandatory for me after a
Mm.
point to conduct
Okay.
my own research for the things I was building. And after a point,
Mm.
I decided that, you know, there is no point in building without knowing which of those, let's say, variations that you may build, or
Mm.
which things that you might and functionalities that you might design will
Mm.
end up addressing the customer needs and the user needs. So I focused completely on research.
Okay.
After a point, I was very lucky to have the chance to work with teams that had very well experienced designers, and it just came naturally after a point.
Mm.
And designers have this kind of ability of,
Mm.
putting everything to the test and informing
Mm.
their process. So the
Mm.
collaboration was, yeah, very natural and very
Mm.
smooth for me. And
That's
after
cool.
that, it just research. Since then, I've focused all my power and forces to that.
Mm.
It is also worth noting that, if a team is mature enough and it has this kind of uh, effectiveness and efficiency approach in how they build software, it is
Mm.
kind of weird to have just a single person do the end-to-end UX,
Yeah.
everything that is
Agreed. Yeah.
UX, research design and maybe UI design at the end. So it becomes a bit more inefficient after a point. But
Yeah.
having two people focusing on one person on design and one person
Absolutely.
on it makes this collaboration kind of very easily going, and it's more efficient, more effective, more
Mm.
fast-paced.
Yeah.
And yeah, it actually helps the team a lot on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And I think as well, you'll always have, like you found out yourself eventually, you have something you just, I don't know, you have more talent for, or just you like doing more. So, for example, in your case, research, or for someone else, it might be more of the UI aspect, or the UX aspect. So you'll find that yeah, focus more naturally on something. So if you're one person doing everything, eventually one thing is going to suffer, in my opinion. So yeah, it's good to have, yeah, more specialist people in there also. That's cool. That's cool. And what was it about research that you enjoyed? Was it that you enjoyed it more? Let's rephrase that question. Was it that you enjoyed doing the research more, or you just saw the importance of the research and that's what drew you towards it?
I think it's the evidence-based nature of research that attracted me the most because,
Okay.
especially in my early years when I was working with startups, that doesn't change the fact that the same thing might happen with large organizations, of course,
Mm.
that you hear all kinds of, opinions and thoughts, and people can jump into solutions very quickly.
Yeah.
My mindset was more on the attention to detail in several things, which helped me later on
Okay.
with research. And it was quite important to assess better, one, are we building the right solution? Right? Like
Mm.
we have five solutions right now. Are we building the
Mm.
right solution? But more importantly, are we solving the right problem? Because
Yeah.
anyone can create on any given day 10 different solutions. But
Yeah.
how do we know if we're solving the right problem? And that was something that perturbed me from the early days, and try
Mm.
to reassess it and try to find the best way, the most efficient way to improve on
Mm.
this.
Yeah.
It takes time, of course, and there are different teams of different maturity that have to be involved in the whole process of research. They have to be, kept in line from the beginning of, the hypothesis, let's say, when we're building our
Mm.
hypothesis or our research questions. And that evolves slowly.
Mm.
Um, Yeah, so I think that's the kind of thing that attracted me most with research. And I've
Mm,
seen the same thing with other researchers, is the
yeah.
geekiness factor, the nerdiness factor of it,
Mhm.
but also the solution, the evaluation of the problem rather than the solution
Yeah,
itself.
absolutely, absolutely. That's cool. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. So obviously you, like you say, you transitioned from UI and eventually you ended up in research. Was there any challenges that you had to overcome during that transition or even just entering the UX industry in general? Was any problems you encountered or challenges and how you overcame that?
I was lucky enough to be able to work with, software building teams early on from my
Mm,
early years.
mm,
So UX was kind of flourishing at that point, just maybe early steps, like it was about 11 or 12 years ago. And it was, uh, there were challenges, of course. I
mm,
believe many of those challenges still exist
mm,
because the market might evolve and might have evolved a lot since then. The maturity of some teams, however, remains or might remain, a bit more low, let's say,
mm.
or at early stages. So it doesn't, the market not always carries together
Right.
all the companies and all the teams in the world, right?
Mm,
Some will be following different practices. So
yeah.
the main challenge, I think, that every single researcher that I've worked with and talked with, and myself
Mm,
included, is to communicate the return on investment of research and
yeah.
communicate properly why uh, we
Mm,
should do research, what's the benefit, and
mm,
help people understand how to approach this beast called
sure.
research, and in what way it will help their software and their
Mm,
customers. And that's how things get are always getting started. Is I think it's one of the first conversations I always have with the basic members of any team I join. Like
mm,
uh, either the engineer part or the designers or the stakeholders themselves, the business stakeholders. It's a
mm,
very common theme. It's like an introduction, and then slowly there is a better improvement and understanding because it's not common for companies
mm,
to have it is common for companies to have an engineer and a
yeah.
designer. It's not always common to have a researcher
Yeah.
in their
That's
midst.
true.
So yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, no,
currently
that's
my job is like 80%, and it has been like that for years. 80% actually talking about research, trying to, I don't exactly like the term educate because, you know,
mm,
but that's the the word that
informing
communicates.
or yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Explaining research to people, the return
Yeah.
on investment and all that, and 20% actually doing
Yeah.
research. And it's, I feel that it has been the same with many other colleagues as well,
Yeah,
outside.
it's true. No, it's true. I've spoken about this on recent episodes as well. That is something that I didn't fully appreciate before becoming a researcher. That I focused a lot just on the research itself, the methodologies, and making sure I understood them correctly and how to conduct an interview survey. But actually, that I would say even more important is how you communicate the research to the various stakeholders. And you quickly find that there are certain, I don't know, certain stakeholders that appreciate the research provided in a different way to somebody else, or you just learn that maybe engineers expect it in a different format and someone else expects it in a different format. So I think that is a skill that I didn't appreciate and probably didn't really focus on until I started working and being a researcher and realized, like you say, that 70 to 80% of the time you're explaining your research, you're trying to find the right way to present it, etc., rather than actually conducting research itself. So how do you think someone who is new that is entering the field, how do you think they can improve those skills in presenting research and kind of focusing on that before they do actually get a role, and so they can be best prepared and not like me that entered the job and wasn't prepared at all for that side of the research?
Yeah, very good question. I constantly try to think myself what I will do differently, and
Mm,
I look back in many of past research, like one kind of let's say, measurements I always apply, mental measurement, of course, is I
Mm,
look back to my research like 3 months ago, 5 months ago, and if I don't find something that I would change, like I really do not like, it means that potentially I have not improved enough. Like I always try to, that tiny adjustment that would make things better. You probably
mm,
know that, at the end of your study, or maybe during your study when you're conducting research. But looking back, you always want to find this room for improvement.
yeah.
And um, so the most fundamental thing that I would have improved years ago is I would read more about research. I would go
Okay.
and be more meticulous and more detailed about the
Mm,
way that I approach research. I found so many resources when, trying to improve a particular process, and just reading stuff in a vacuum has not helped me so much as it has helped me to read within context. What I mean by that is,
okay. Yeah.
let's say I want to run a diary study and I have, for example, not run a diary study before, or whatever the methodology might be, right? It might be a treatise, might be a card sort.
Mm,
And or and let's say that I have done this once or twice, or I have never done this before. I would go and start
mm,
looking in resources and try to read as many, books, articles, kind of. It sounds like the secondary research for methodology
yeah.
kind of approach. So looking into different practices and approaches on that to try to understand more about it,
Mm,
and then start this kind of try and error and
yeah.
execute the study itself with small iterations to try and improve them, and then mark down all the things that did not go well and improve on that in the
Yeah.
next run. So yes, so reading, that will be the first and
Yeah.
most fundamental thing, because I said it's like 80-20, right? Like 80,
Mm,
20, 80% communication, 20% of execution. In order to run efficiently and effectively this 20% of research, you have to get to a point where you don't use all your mental energy. Like some things have to be, you know them already. I mean, as a researcher, you will
mm,
always consider alternatives. You will try
yeah.
to fight your own biases. You will measure for reliability and validity. That's
Mm,
always given. But in order to have this kind of process to make it easy and take only that 20% of your time,
mhm,
it means that you have to spend a lot of time again and again to evaluate your methodology. So being a good
mm,
methodologist and know exactly what is needed in each situation, I feel that that makes a very good researcher, especially, within nowadays where practically in every team, anyone can start conducting research, which makes things quite often a bit convoluted.
mm,
You might have heard of studies that someone ran a survey with 10 people, or
mm,
they did, they measured things that could not be measured, or they
mm.
did some interviews in 5 seconds. I don't know. Things that might not be, and I'm not judging all those things, right? I'm just saying
Yeah.
that in certain situations, it might not answer necessarily all your research questions properly.
Yeah.
And it is good because to have this knowledge about methodology, because it gives the researcher credibility, and that
Hmm.
credibility can withstand scrutiny. And that's how many teams that have higher values kind of respect you and they understand more about
Mm.
research, because it's based on scientific facts and it's not based on the mood of the day.
Yeah. No, it's a nice piece of advice. Yeah, it's something that I also appreciate as well, the fact of reading a bit more in context because when it's there and you need to learn about that particular whatever methodology or skill or whatever. Yeah, I feel that I absorb it more than if I read just to read or just to take in knowledge. Maybe it helps a bit, but then when you're actually there and you need to you need to do a particular thing like a diary study or whatever, and then you go and read the resources, then yeah, you can obviously then apply it there and then because you're working on it. So that's cool. Was there any kind of particular advice that anyone gave you during the years that that I don't know stuck with you or something that comes to mind often?
That's an even better question. Um, you know, I think that because um, the majority of research has to do with communication. I mean,
Mm,
you might conduct the best research in the world, and if you don't involve the right people from the beginning, if you don't play along with everyone in the team, you might end up no one seeing your research or no one being
mm,
interested about your amazing results.
yeah.
So communication is key. That's definitely important. And sometimes, it might be, quite a common thing that you hear all around, but um, it is important. It is really important to pick your fights
Mm,
when it comes to that, like, and to not recruit people. I think that that came
okay.
from Mr. Manson. He said that fantastic quote about try to recruit people, or Don Ariely. I don't remember who of the two said that. And
Yeah.
just you don't run a crusade as a researcher.
Yeah.
You don't. Not everyone has to know exactly what you're
Mm,
doing. You can help
yeah.
them, but of course, they have to want to be. They have
Yeah.
to have the willingness to learn about this. I've worked with many people in the past that they were quite eager
Mm,
to learn about research, understand research, and sometimes
mm,
run, participate in research and run research
yeah.
themselves. And I work with people that literally they wouldn't care about it. They just want to see the results.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might want to, have a saying about the research
Mm,
questions or the scope because they're
mm,
interested in the results to apply it.
mm,
And that's enough for them. So
yeah.
good communication at the beginning is,
Mm,
I think, a very good thing. And I've had at the early stages of my career, many mentors that have kept
mm,
repeating this to me
yeah.
to focus on how to communicate that. And it takes time. It does not happen
Mm.
overnight.
No, no, absolutely. Yeah, it will be. That's also something that you will gain as you gain experience as a junior, and eventually you work up that communication side of things. Are there any particular resources on this kind of subject that are in your mind that you're willing to share? It could be a book or just something you've read or anything, a course.
Yes, of course. How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale
Okay,
Carnegie.
yes,
An
I
exceptional
know that
book
one.
on that. Yeah. It has helped me a lot on that department.
Mm,
Robert Cialdini's book,
okay.
Influence, is another one. Very good. And in general, when it comes to research, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman's book is
Yeah.
an absolute treasure, of course, because
Yes.
I don't think I have to even explain that. Is comes given it changes your perspective on many things because
Yeah.
it's the epitome of research, both as a researcher and
Mm,
as a communicator, because it contains a lot of biases and how people think with biases, and that at the end of the day, knowing your biases
mm.
will not exactly help you mitigate them, but being aware, you cannot take them away. Like you cannot remove all your biases, but
Yeah.
you may think twice about a thing. It may make you think twice. That what
Yeah.
Kahneman calls system two, practically.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I've read that book, almost read it, like finished it. But yeah, it's that's a great book, and also the other two. The second one you said I've not read, but I've heard of it. But the first one, influencing people, is a great book as well. So thanks for sharing them, and thanks for taking the time today to speak with me on your career and how you're into user research and your passion and things like that. It's been really beneficial for me, but also hopefully for our listeners.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I thank you very much for having this chat, and thank you very much for the wonderful questions.
No problem at all. Maybe we can get you back in the future and we can get a bit more technical, maybe.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to.
Cool. Thank you. Bye.